In the last few days, the Astartes project has taken YouTube by storm, reaching second place on YouTube trending within 24 hours of its initial release. This epic one-man project, after many hardships and having the creator's account hacked, came back with a hard-hitting swing thanks to Warhammer 40k community contributors who finally talked some sense into YouTube's real-life staff. Despite the fact that the entire 5-part series is 13 minutes long, it has an amazing underlying story to tell. Taking a deep dive into the lore of the Astartes project, I have formulated my own understanding of the series' background story. Without further ado, please allow me to give you my in-depth analysis of the story of the Astartes project. Before the events of the Astartes storyline, the chaos-worshipping Xenos race known as the Yuvath has conquered the worlds and its inhabitants of the Calyx Expanse, also known as the Segmentum Obscurus, with relative ease. During these countless millennia, the formless shape-shifting Yuvath, using their warp-fueled psychic powers, made slaves out of every race they encountered, and shaped the world which they inhabited to their will. A common practice of the formless incorporeal Yuvath was to force their slaves to build giant constructs, which they could then inhabit to have physical presence as quasi-demon engines. When not inhabiting an exobody, the most common form the Yuvath take are ornate spheres surrounded by dark energy, but as mentioned before, there are very few Imperial records on what these Xenos actually look like. In the years of the Angevin Crusade, the Imperium had all but eradicated the Yuvath, often resorting to exterminatus-level measures, since the planet's population the Yuvath had controlled, numbering in the millions, were all under their psychic influence, uniting against the invading Imperium. After the Angevin Crusade had concluded, the Imperial Inquisition made absolutely sure to delete all Imperial records and seize and destroy all known artifacts of the Yuvath, due to them being extremely heretical. To further emphasize the corrupting nature of the Yuvath, it is said that the Adeptus Mechanicus, when coming across a piece of such heretical Xenos tech, will immediately eradicate it with extreme prejudice. The Ordo Malleus, after capturing 2 Yuvath artifacts, started studying it, in hope that by unlocking the secrets of these artifacts, they could find any and all remaining Yuvath and destroy them. It is unclear for how long the Inquisition had had the 2 spheres in their possession, but it is safe to assume that they were captured either shortly before or during the Argoza campaign. At long last, the final Yuvath artifact of the sector was identified, as it was prepared to be evacuated by the now rebel forces, most probably already under the influence of the entity residing within the sphere. Now that we had a little pre-introduction to the storyline, let's jump back to 482 M39, the events which are happening during the Astartes series. So, multiple Imperial starships appear and are on an intercept course with the now rebel transport ship. Normally, the Imperial Navy would blast such a traitor craft out of the void, but in this case, a boarding party of a 5-man Impulsor Marine squad, led by Sergeant Koran, was sent to eliminate the crew and capture its cargo. Previous Imperial intelligence data suggested that a single 5-man Impulsor squad will be more than efficient to pacify the ship and her crew. They were correct for the most part. Although the military personnel on the traitor ship were vastly outgunned, they never considered surrendering to the Imperial forces. Seemingly, they were fighting to the last man, and they were throwing waves after waves of men to stop the unstoppable. They even used dozens of guardsmen as bait to lure Sergeant Koran to a narrow corridor to unload a multi-laser on him, even sacrificing most of the guardsmen running in front of him. I am more than sure that the Yuvath entity held all of the ship's crew under its psychic influence. The 2 psychers on the ship weren't psychers. To the extent of the meaning of the term. Well, hear me out on this one. They weren't psychers, but they were warp-enhanced. and most probably possessed or soulbound. A little side note here before we move on. Let's jump to the scene when the Inquisitor gets possessed by one of the Yuvath. As the Inquisitor is trying to resist the possession, he is tormented by demonic visions. The first one is most significant here. In his vision, we can see over a dozen tall, cloaked, shadowy figures, which were identical to the two, for the lack of a better word, psychers the Astartes encountered. In all probability, they are a sort of cabal, chosen by the Yuvath to carry out their will. They are much taller than average humans, and almost as tall as a fully armored Astartes. They are seemingly impervious to pain, since after taking a point-blank hit from an Astartes bolt pistol, the Psyker doesn't even grunt. It is plausible that they were enhanced and or possessed post-humans, and were empowered by Yuvath xenotech to give them psychic-like powers. These items were also present in the vault: the ritual golden masks and the spinal cord-like psychic amplifiers. The probability of the quote-unquote psychers being possessed instruments is further strengthened when the Astartes kill them. Apart from the previously mentioned point-blank bolt round taken to the torso, when the second Marine sprints towards the target from the rear flank and drives his combat knife through the skull of the psyker, no blood can be seen on the blade. Furthermore, when the bodies hit the floor, the camera shows us an overhead shot of the hull. There is no pool of blood expanding underneath the corpses. More on this later. As the Astartes move into Vault number 2, back on the Cobra class, the Inquisitor prepares to interface with one of the previously captured Yuvath spheres. As previously pointed out, 2 of these spheres are present, suspended overhead with psychic cogitator cables running down into the floor, relaying the connection to the Inquisitor's mask. The Inquisitor is overseen by a 1st Company veteran sergeant named Hakel and another veteran wearing the Mark VI Corvus pattern helmet. We cut back to the Astartes on the captured ship. Moving ever deeper into the vault, Sergeant Koran and his Marines encounter a giant golden statue that was most probably meant for the Yuvath entity residing in the sphere. The entity was, for all intents and purposes, instructing the enslaved humans to build it a body which it can bind itself to. However, the arriving Imperial forces have disrupted this construction, as you can see the golden humanoid statue lying on a makeshift bed with unfinished neural web wiring still visible, missing an arm and a leg. The previously mentioned engraved masks with the psychic amplifiers shaped as spinal cords are also present, which implies that the Yuvath entity was planning to expand its cabal of enhanced post-human slaves. As the Marines successfully resist the psychic assault of the entity, they begin to install some sort of probes, so that the Inquisitor on the other void vessel could begin his observations. As the Inquisitor eavesdrops on the conversation between the spheres, the following exchange can be heard. "Who is here?" "I have failed, brother." "We have all failed. The Astartes deny our touch." "You must return. Break your seal." "Impossible. We will never survive." "You must. Take them." The Inquisitor, realizing what is about to go down, warns veteran Sergeant Hakel to immediately extract the boarding party, since the mission is now compromised. Here, the remaining 2 entities decide to make a run for it, and in a desperate attempt, the sphere on the Inquisitorial ship overloads, and with a pulse of blue energy through the attached cogitator cables, the Yuvath possesses the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is now haunted by visions of what was or what may be, while trying to resist, chanting psychic words to seal his mind off, but without success. At this point, his muffled voice slowly shifts to the demonic vibrato of the Yuvath, and the possession is complete. Veteran Sergeant Hakiel, keeping a close eye on him all along, executes the now possessed Inquisitor, and for good measures, the accompanying veteran secures the kill with additional point-blank bolter rounds. The second UVOT entity attempts the same maneuver, assaulting the Marines, but since possession is out of the question, it resorts to a more unconventional tactic. For a brief moment it reveals itself to Sergeant Koran, then it begins to pull the squad into its sphere-shaped form, trying to secure itself a form of anchorage, using the Marines' life essence as a means of survival in a desperate attempt to flee back to the place they must return. The nearly incapacitated Marines are dragged inside the warp, where we can see giant ominous shadows floating in the background, the predators of the warp. Without any form of protection, a psychically potent entity, such as the Yuvath, immediately catches the attention of the warp horrors, and one of them pounces on it. Since in the warp, if you have a great psychic potential, you are basically lit up like a Christmas tree in the middle of a forest at midnight. With the Yuvath being destroyed, the cord is severed, and with a psychic backlash caused by the entity's death, the Marines re-enter real space, possibly at the original destination of the fleeing Yuvath. Although it's unclear whether this is one of the long-forgotten worlds of the Yuvath, or the Marines never left the warp, is still up for debate. Observing the skeletal giants sitting on their thrones the size of hive cities, and the walls decorated with even more giant skeletal remains almost blocking out the skies, suggests that normal real space physics may not apply to this world. What happens to the Marines after this will be speculated on for many, many months to come. And that was about it, guys. How did you like my explanation? Was I on point? Was there anything I missed? Do you agree with my plot thesis? Or am I way off and this was all just a load of BS? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. I would like to thank you all for watching, and please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to my channel. Again, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching, and see you guys in the next video.